Welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to go over some cell phone basics. First of all, what we want to do is set a couple of camera settings so that you guys can maintain some standard functions and settings ongoing while you're photographing. So let's go to our camera settings here. We're going to open up our camera settings and we're going to go down to our camera icon. We're going to open up some of our camera functions here, and these are going to set us some specifics that we will be able to maintain. So let's scroll up to the top. And first of all, we want to make sure that we have our grid set. Our grid will allow us to have some form of basically framing our shots, and we can keep our images framed in our display window as we're photographing. I make sure all of my different modes here are selected so that when we record, we have these functions saved. So once that's set, let's go back to our settings. And we're going to scroll out of here. Next, what we're going to do, we're going to go directly to our camera mode. Let's go to our camera icon. And we're going to open up our camera mode in our specific camera. So let's scroll down to our display window, and I am using a cell phone SE, which is pretty similar to most of your cell phone camera options and modes. So we're going to go over some basics here. First of all, I'm going to describe the bottom part of your cell phone camera display window. We have a series of all of our different mode options that we can use in this camera mode. So first of all, what I want to do is we're going to walk through just a couple of the cell phone modes we are going to use exclusively in this class. Right now we are on our photo mode, which is our basic mode, to our camera function. If we either scroll with our finger, we can click on our different modes, and our different modes will highlight. So we were in the photo mode, which is our basic mode for photographing our stills. Our next mode is our portrait mode, and this mode has a little bit more options so we can control the exposure and quality of our image a little bit more. Our last mode that we're going to go over in my SE is our panel mode, which gives me a very wide angle view of my specific scene. So let's go back to our portrait mode, our photo mode, and let's start with our photo mode. So when we're in our photo mode, I'm going to go ahead and pan up to the top half of my cell phone camera screen here. And as you see on the top half of our screen here, we have some functions that we can use. It's very limited on my phone, but you can see on the very far left we have our flash mode. In the center here we have our little arrow which allows us to enable and turn on the tool mode, which we'll list on the bottom part, and we'll show that. The second mode, as we tap it on and off, it'll enable it and disable it. So if we look at the very far right mode, this is your live view mode. Make sure, everybody, that this live view mode is off, because if it's in live view, what that does, it actually slows down your shutter, so you have what's called a shutter lag, which means your shutter will not go off instantly when you push your shutter on the bottom of your cell phone window here. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that's disabled. Make sure it's off, because it will be a hassle when you start photographing. So let's go ahead and go through some different functions and some tool settings here that we will adjust and enable on the bottom of our screen. So when I scroll down to the bottom of my cell phone window display here, we have our different mode options. So right now I'm in photo mode. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the top of my window again. I'm going to enable my toolbar menu, and you can see in my display window my tools open right above my shutter button. It's very limited, but I do have some tool options that I can adjust. On the very left we have the flash. Next to that, we have our cell phone live mode, which is disabled. Now we have our form factor or the aspect ratio, which is basically the dimensions of your screen. Right now it's under 4:3, which is a standard frame size that I use. That's pretty close to 35 millimeters. So if we tap on that mode, now we have some different options that we have outside of the 4:3 mode here. We can go into our square format again, and so we have a square format if we want that specific format. If we click on our format icon again, it will enable us to go ahead and opens up our choices. Our last choice I have on my particular camera is a 16:9, which is a little bit more as a full frame screen mode. So when I photograph, I like to stay in my 4:3, which is closer to what I like as a 4:3. So I'm going to go ahead and select my 4:3 mode. So once I've selected my mode, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go back to my other two options. I'm going to scroll out of my tools and I'm going to go to my next mode setting, which is portrait. So I'm going to tap my portrait mode. What's nice about my portrait mode is I have some different options here. So when I'm in my portrait mode, I'm going to have some options where I can adjust my image a little bit better than I can in the regular traditional basic photo mode. So in my portrait mode, I'm going to go ahead and enable my toolbars here. And as you look at my different options here, we have our basic flash mode. If I tap my flash mode, we have three options. We can enable automatic flash, we can turn it on or off. I always have my flash on because I like to use my flash a lot of times. The next option we have here is our self timer. I can turn my self timer on, which is, we'll have an exercise which we will practice that later on this semester. I have a 3-second timer and I have a 10-second timer, which is limited. I'll go back and I'm going to turn off my timer. My next mode, which is very useful, is my color mode here. In my color mode, I have a series of default settings here. As I tap them, I can change my color mode and different color balances if I opt to. And you can see I can either scroll with my finger or tap and choose a specific modes if I like. We can adjust our different creative defaults either from different color options or converting to black and white. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll back to the beginning, go back to the original. And what's nice is you can see my mode is actually highlighted and labeled as we enable those. So I'm going to go and close my color mode. And another feature that's great with my portrait mode, you can see we have this F mode. That is your f-stop. So when I enable my f-stop mode, it allows me to select my particular aperture here, and I can scroll either with my finger, and you can see what happens is I enable my aperture, I can enable my focus distance, which allows me to adjust my focus from maximum focus to shallow depth of field. So again, I have option here to choose the mode that I want. So we're going to go back to 5.6 or 6.3. What happens is when I adjust my aperture mode, my other controls that are part of my camera, which is an automatic adjustments, it'll automatically adjust my ISO and shutter, which we're going to talk about later. So once I have my options set here, I'm ready to go. And again, last but not least is our shutter mode. And right now, because I have my flash on, you can see we just photographed my particular scene. Right now, I photographed it with my settings, with my flash mode, and we have a pretty good setting. So that's all for now, everybody. That gives you a real quick tutorial on how to use some of the options and settings with your camera. So till next week, I will see you later. Bye.